Would you still believe in your religion if you had been born somewhere else? If you had been born in Thailand, would you still be Christian? And in vice versa, if you were born in the United States, would you still be Buddhist? This is interesting and kind of uncomfortable because we don't get to choose where we're born. So that kind of poses the question, how much of faith is conviction and how much of it is just circumstance? I think this is something that just kind of naturally happens when you get older. You just start questioning these kind of things. We don't get to choose what first language we learn. We don't choose our parents. We don't choose especially where we're born. So to me, why would religion be any different? That's something I find interesting since as children, we're more usually to accept the real world of what it is. Since we're little, we have no reason not to. But then as we grow older, I see, at least just the people around me, I see either become kind of religional centric or they start gravitating, kind of pushing away from the religion. And this kind of leads to making everything feel like that's true, making it feel like those metaphysical beliefs that you learned from when you were a little kid, it makes them true going into your teenagehood, or the adult life. Before we get any further, I think it's important to kind of acknowledge the position of maybe where I might be coming from, since there might be just a little bit of bias. And I think there always will be bias when talking about things like religion. So it's really difficult to try to erase or delete every every like little slither of bias. But yeah, for me, I practiced Christianity for 18 years of my life. I grew up with it. I'm now 19, and I'd consider myself agnostic at most. And I could go down many rabbit holes as to why I'm I think in an agnostic perspective and how I came to that conclusion and what made me diverge from Christianity and all these good things, but that's not what this video is really about. I can go into that in another topic or another video another day. But yeah, this video isn't an argument to disprove any religion or to prove any religion. It's more of an exploration of a set of ideas that's something that's been lingering in my mind, and I just wanted to make something a little bit more formal instead of just have it into thought and put something together that kind of has my thoughts there and my beliefs kind of there. This video is kind of about geography and where you were born and how the many influences around us kind of bring us to be to our religious beliefs. And I'm just choosing religion. It could have been anything else. This video could have been an ethical video, philosophical video, or kind of is in some ways, but I mainly chose to do religion just because it kind of brings me the most like passion and it kind of keeps me going a little bit more than the rest. And it's something that I've been personally dealing with myself and trying to figure out um, what religion might be best for me or why it's not the best for me. And it's for sure been a journey. But I would love to hear different thoughts and perspectives. So yeah, this kind of question of different religious contingencies have been on my mind for a while now. And it's been on my mind because I think it's pretty interesting how I myself can put so much faith into a religion, how people can put so much faith into one religion, and there being many out there. For me, it's kind of like, how am I to say this is the religion for me full heartedly without knowing the others that are out there? So, yeah, growing up in Connecticut, the statistics say from 2023 to 2024 that 57% of its residents are Christian, which are roughly 2 million of its population. It's important to note that 21% also are not identified as religious at all. Just putting that out there. So then, if we take a step even further back from Connecticut, from where I was born, you could see that the United States, 62 to 66% of it falls under Christianity. So, in a geographical sense, you could see that everything was kind of pulling me towards Christianity. But yeah, there's much more to that, of course, not just the state and nationwide. Let's bring it a little closer. My family was Christian, Catholic. The environment around me was Christian, going to schools. The people around me were Christian. The rest of my family was Christian. Christianity kind of became my default understanding of the world around me when I was a kid. So here's where my first epiphany just kind of began with the simple fact that it seems like on the surface people might overlook, but in reality it made me think a little deeper and it kind of changed my perspective on things. So, if we take a step further back and look at the stats here, from a global perspective, we can see that only 29% of people believe in some type of Christianity in the world as of 2020. And see, there are billions that put faith into Hinduism, Islamic, or just Christianity beliefs, or people are just not Christian in general. But yeah, even knowing that kind of stat, for most of my life, Christianity didn't feel like one religion. As you can see, there's many, like I just stated, but that's how the reality felt. But my reality wouldn't be the same, and my faith wouldn't be the same if I would have been born, let's say, Indonesia or Thailand. But just to be clear, this observation doesn't tell us what religion is true. These religions, or just not being religious in general, can still be true. That's not what the evidence says, though. But what it does say is that where we're born has a huge influence of what we're first taught, of what we first believe in, and what we first, of course, see. And how much of that is self-evidently true to me and true to the consequences of where I was just born in the first place. So first, we've established that wherever you're born has a huge influence on what religion you're first taught to believe. If geography doesn't tell us what religion is true, then why does it have such a strong influence on what people believe? There, to answer that, we have to ask a more fundamental question. How do people even begin to believe things in the first place? One of those important factors are culture. It gives you kind of the framework to feel what's obvious, believable, or just completely foreign. Culture doesn't just influence what you believe, it shapes how you decide what feels believable in the first place. Someone who changed the way I looked at this question was Harvard professor and author Joseph Henrich. In The Weirdest People in the World, he argues that many ways people in Western societies think aren't universal, they're cultural. He coined the term weird to describe the population that psychology has often mistakenly treated as representative of all humanity. Henrich argues that even ideas we assume are simply just human nature, like how we think about fairness, individuality, or reasoning, can vary dramatically across cultures. His broader point is that culture isn't just background noise, it's more of an operating system. Change the culture, and you don't just change what someone else believes, you also change the framework they use to decide what counts as believable. All right, now, if culture is the ocean, then your parents in this analogy would just be the current that kind of pulls you in the direction long before you even learn how to swim on your own. One of the most influential studies on this comes from sociologist Vern Bexton on his longitudinal studies of generations at USC, which followed more than 300 families across multiple generations over several decades. In Families and Faith, Bexton found that one of the strongest predictors of whether a child were to retain their parents' religion isn't simply church attendance or religious instruction. It's the quality of the parent-child relationship. Emotional warmth, particularly from fathers, played a surprisingly important role. And the most recent data from Pew Research points in a similar direction. Children raised in highly religious households are far more likely to retain religious as adults than those raised in a less religious home. Across much of the world, most people still identify with the religion or lack of religion they're raised with. So again, none of us choose our parents. We don't choose how religious our home is or the relationships that shape us during childhood. Yet, those circumstances, which are completely outside of our control, have remarkable influence on us. All right, on to the next factor. We have community. Belief isn't shaped only by what's inside our home, it's shaped by everyone else outside of it as well. Sociologist Peter Berger argued that our beliefs are supported by what he called a plausibility structure. The people around us who, simply by living though something is true, make it feel it true as well. Nobody has to be pretending. When everyone around you treats an idea as reality, it gradually stops feeling like a belief at all. It just feels the way the world is. So again, community doesn't teach us what to believe. It just kind of quietly reinforces those beliefs until they stop feeling like beliefs, and then they just start feeling like reality. All right, so far we have community, we have family, and we have culture. But to top it all off, there's what's happening inside your own mind, which might be the most interesting and compelling piece of them all, in my opinion. Developmental psychologists Paul Harris and Melissa Koenig found that young children learn about religion and science in remarkably different ways. A child can't personally verify that germs exist any more than they can verify God exists. So they rely on the testimony of trusted adults. But what happens once those beliefs are formed? Psychologists have studied a tendency known as confirmation bias. Once we hold a belief, our mind naturally seeks information that supports it while overlooking that information that challenges it. It's not something unique to religion, but it's something simply just being human. Put these ideas together, and you'll start to see that many of our earliest beliefs are formed through trust long before we are able to critically evaluate them. Then, as we grow older, our own minds often reinforce those beliefs without us even realizing that. That doesn't mean that these beliefs are false, it just kind of brings up another question. And this, along with everything else, ties back into my main question. How much of what I can call my beliefs did I genuinely arrive through my own independent reasoning? And to add on, how much did I inherit before I was even in a position to choose on my own? With the question I kind of wanted to pose and ask today, I wasn't trying to prove one religion or another one's false or convince anyone to kind of like abandon their faith. I just kind of wanted to understand how belief even begins, or to maybe have someone think about something that they have even considered before. Videos like this kind of bring me passion because I get to build a deeper understanding of myself and sometimes others. Like for me, something that really helped me kind of I guess question my own beliefs a little bit more is just the research that kind of went into this and all the studies and all the authors, and it kind of just digging deep into that helped me even realize things that I currently believe now, not tying into religion, kind of made me question it and maybe just think and self-reflect more. And honestly, at the end of the day, I think we all should kind of have that own self-reflection, not on just our religious beliefs, but in general. Just don't take things at face value. But what we've seen is that where we're born, the culture we're surrounded by, and the people who raise us, the communities we are part of, the psychology of our minds all have profound influence of what we believe. But again, None of what I've said tells us what religion is true, but it does tell us something about ourselves. It tells us that confidence and the truth are two different things. Maybe your religion is true. Maybe mine was, but no one knows. What matters, at least to me, is just recognizing how much of what feels obvious to us may have been inherited long before we're even capable of questioning these things. The more I've kind of researched this thing, the less certain I've become because questions like these and diving into them, you kind of you see how complicated they become when you really try to chase what the truth actually is. But again, the goal isn't to be certain because before making this video, I had to kind of comprise of the research and all of this stuff, and I realized there's so much out there, and even there's not research, but there's points even contradicting the somewhat people would call concrete research. So you really never know. There will always be something that kind of contradicts something else out there, even though it might seem super concrete. There will always be people out there that kind of question and debate certainties like that, I guess. I tried my best looking for research and making this script, and obviously, as you can tell, I did read off of it. I'm just that type of person. I find it really hard to kind of like memorize these kind of things. But like I said, the goal isn't to be certain, but to remain curious enough to keep asking better questions and understand things in general. Like I was saying, doing the research for this video helped me get a better understanding of not just myself, but of just humans in general and how they believe and why they believe in certain things. And I can't blame people now for believing in certain things, and not even just in a religious sense, maybe in a political sense, ethical sense, philosophical sense. And we're all kind of just going through this thing of life. But yeah, just keep being curious.